What is up, wrestling fans? Smackdown Stu here, and I'm just going to make a few adjustments in the background here. This is the Smackdown Stu report. Welcome to the Smackdown Stu report. As you can see behind me, and I'm gonna try and move over here. John Cena. You could see John Cena in the background. You can't see me, Mr. John Cena with the WWE Championship. And yes, thank you for joining us. This is the SmackDown Stu report for Thursday, June 26th, 2025. Again, as I always do, I'd like to remind you to subscribe to the SmackDown Stu YouTube channel right here on YouTube and like the uh, the episode. And of course, I have an email, smackdownstewchannel at gmail.com. That's smackdownstewchannel at gmail.com. You can send me an email. You can look on our Facebook page, the SmackDown Stu YouTube channel Facebook page, if you have any questions or comments. Hey, John, you can't see me. I told you last week. We were right there. We could see you. Anyway, on today's SmackDown Stu report, we will again do WCW Part 2, and also, and we have a lot this week in professional wrestling history. So let's get right to it. With WCW Part 2. I know we left off when Vince Russo got hired, but we're going to go back a little bit because the demise of WCW actually happened. Um, the first time in 83 weeks that WWF um, beat WCW. Uh, and hello, Yoni Feldman. That's the June bug. Glad you're joining us today. Hello, hello. So the episode that day when WWF beat WCW for the first time was the night of the finger poke of doom, and also the night of WCW giving away WWF spoilers. Well, they had a habit of giving away spoilers because, as Eric Bischoff said in numerous podcasts, nobody knows or knew what he was going to do on WCW Nitro because they were live, but he could tell the viewers what was happening on WWF Raw because they're taped. So that night was the night Mankind defeated The Rock. Mankind Mick Foley defeated The Rock to become for his first WWF World Heavyweight Championship. And Tony Schiavone broadcasted the results on Nitro, and everybody turned the channel to see that, and that's when WCW lost the audience. And also that same night was a finger poke of doom. You thought Kevin Nash and Hulk Hogan would go at it. They step in the ring. Hogan wearing dress pants and cowboy boots and a dress shirt or a t-shirt walks in the ring, walks up to Nash, looks like he's going to punch him, and just pokes him in the chest. Nash goes down. Hogan gets the cover, and it's like the NWO screwed everybody. And they started laughing, and that was horrible. Horrible. You build up to a match and just poke, and Kevin Nash goes down for the count. 1, 2, 3, and Hogan is the champion. That's when WCW was beaten by WWF the first time in 83 weeks. Now, after that, it went downhill. Bischoff was let go by Brad Siegel. Brad Siegel, one of the people who worked for Ted Turner, Time Warner, called Eric Bischoff in his office and said, "I'm sorry, we have to let you go. You know, it's not working." They brought in Vince Russo, but the problem with Vince Russo is in WCW, he didn't have a Vince McMahon behind him to weed out the bad ideas. Because he did have some good ideas, but he didn't have Vince McMahon to weed out the bad ideas, and it was just awful. When he started, he was just a voice, like the powers that be, and he had two bodyguards with him, identical twins. You might know them as Jacob and Eli Blue. Then they were the Harris Boys, Skull and Eight Ball from DOA, and he named them Patrick and Gerald to mock Vince McMahon stooges, Pat Patterson, Hall of Famer Pat Patterson, and Hall of Famer Gerald Briscoe. and people were coming into his office, and it was horrible. Then finally, he made his debut on TV, and the gimmicks were lousy, lousy. Hacksaw Jim Duggan turning heel and joining Canada against the U.S. Like, what is Canada doing? Like in the DVD that WWE put out, the top 20, the top 50 incidents in WCW history. Hacksaw Jim Duggan says, "We're not fighting Canada. That doesn't make an impact." They had him cut his hair short and shave his beard so nobody recognized him in the back. He said people weren't recognizing him until they looked closely. That was awful. There was the junkyard hardcore battle royal or hardcore battle where they were battling in a junkyard, and Steven Regal, well, not William Regal, pointed out in the DVD that it was crazy. When the cameras were off, they'd just stop, and then when the cameras come back on, they started fighting again. And he was just hiding underneath, and then when the camera came back on, he'd jump up and looked like he's punching somebody. It was awful, a disaster. Even they brought in the Ultimate Warrior, but that wasn't in Vince Russo's time. But it was a disaster, all the gimmicks. The artist formerly known as Prince Iakea, that's when Prince was known as artist formerly known as Prince. They had Seven, which was a knockoff of Goldust, white face paint. It was terrible. It was awful. That WCW, that era. A lot of the gimmicks were horrible. You had the Maestro. It was the Disciple was like a knockoff of Kiss. It was horrible. Even the matches, there was that Vince Russo came up with. There was a title match on a box. In boxes, there was four boxes. Three of them contained weapons, and one contained the title. And if you grab the box with the title, and and yeah, we'll okay, Becca Monster. We'll get to that. I do have news about the about the pay per view. I did read online, and we'll get back to WCW in 2 seconds. That the WWE superstars are on their way to Saudi Arabia. They're on a flight, and it is going to happen on Saturday. That's what I had read. They never said it was canceled. Superstars are on their way to Saudi Arabia, and it looks like the pay per view will happen. I will take a look again if there's an update in just a few minutes. But it looks like it's going to happen. I read today that they're already on the way to Saudi Arabia. So getting back to WCW now, it was crazy. So what happened was, and also Vince Russo gave himself the title and another stupid gimmick. David Arquette, because he was in the movie Ready to Rumble with WCW superstars, became the WCW champion, which was crazy. Now, then what happened was Russo was tired of dealing with the powers that be. They weren't allowing him to do the things he wanted. Even Bischoff at the time, they wanted him to be. They wanted it to be more catered to children, which is what Bischoff didn't want. Bischoff, when he started with the NWO, he wanted the storylines to be real. So he told Vince Russo, Brad Siegel, look, we want to do a booking by committee. But he didn't want to do a committee, and he said, "Listen," Spiegel said to Russo, "I want you to meet somebody. Go have lunch with somebody." And Russo knew it was Eric Bischoff, so they decided to work together. They created the storyline, the New Blood versus the Millionaires Club. Where the old school wrestlers like Hulk Hogan, Lex Luger, Ric Flair, uh, you know, Kevin Nash, the old school wrestlers against the New Blood. They came out once on Nitro and stripped everybody of the titles. It was crazy. But the biggest thing that made WCW a laughing stock and showed the real character of Vince Russo was the famous Bash at the Beach 2000. Now, excuse me, Vince Russo said that when he got to WCW, he went around the room asking who should be the next WCW champion, because then they were pushing the old school guys. Like Kevin Nash was a booker at one point, and so he wanted to push like the new generation. Everybody in that production meeting said, when he went around the table, said Booker T. So he says, that's what we're going to do. Jeff Jarrett was the champion at that time. So Russo decided he wanted to put Jarrett over on some of the legends to make him look, to to give him a little more credibility, so that when Booker T would beat him, it would be great. So for Bash at the Beach 2000, Jeff Jarrett was booked to defend the WCW Championship against Hulk Hogan. Now Bischoff had a plan, but that we'll get to in a moment. Russo had it written before the pay per view, had written the match and had made Hulk Hogan look good. Like he made Hulk Hogan look strong. But the one thing that doesn't happen, Hulk Hogan does not leave Bash at the Beach with the WCW championship. He's not the WCW champion when he leaves. The day of the pay per view, Hogan uh, an aide came to see Vince Russo when he was at the arena and said Hulk Hogan's not going to do it. So they have a meeting. Again, Russo books Hulk Hogan even stronger, but he doesn't leave Bash at the Beach the WCW champion. Hulk Hogan does not want to do that. And so Russo claims that he went to Jeff Jarrett and told Jarrett, just lay down for Hogan. Just do it. And Eric Bischoff, whom I tend to believe a little bit more, for me has more credibility, was saying it was part of a storyline that Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff came up with. That Jeff Jarrett would lie down for Hogan. That's what they came up with at the end. Would lie down for Hulk Hogan. Hogan would put his foot on Jarrett, win the title, and leave in disgust, which means that, and would leave and leave the building and, you know, go on a flight. And that would mean that the WCW title would be vacant, and there would, in fact, be a tournament to decide the next WCW champion, with the finals cultivating and culminating at Halloween Havoc. So at Halloween Havoc, and then what was supposed to happen was when the two superstars were about to face off, or whoever won the title in that match at Halloween Havoc, Hulk Hogan's music would hit and say, I have the title. I'm the champion. If you want to call yourself the WCW champion, you have to beat me. But what ended up happening was Hogan was put over. Jarrett laid down for him. Hogan left in disgust. They left the arena. Bischoff and Hogan went on a flight, and Vince Russo came back and with the infamous spiel about how Hulk Hogan, how he was playing politics with Hulk Hogan uh, all day because Hogan wanted to play his creative control card. So he let out kayfabe that he wouldn't, he didn't want to, he wanted to stay the WCW champion, or he wanted to win the title. And he said, and I quote, "You'll never see that piece of shit again." And he really berated Hogan. And at the end of the night, he made a match that Jeff Jarrett would face Booker T for the WCW championship, and Booker T won the title. But Hulk Hogan didn't, and Bischoff didn't know anything about that. They were on a plane. Once they landed in Orlando, in Florida, their phones went off. Messages saying that Bischoff, I can't believe it, Bischoff just came out and berated Hogan. So, of course, Hulk Hogan sued Vince Russo, but he didn't get anywhere. But he was furious. And, that would have made for great, a great pay per view. That would have been great, I think. Mr. Newfie, Mr. Zach, what up, bro? So that's what made it. That would have made it great. You have Hogan coming, and you could probably have convinced Hogan to pass the torch. They didn't do that. They looked like a laughing stock, and it just got worse and worse and worse and worse from there. Um, Dennis Rodman, I love Dennis Rodman. That character, he was okay, but you bring in Carl the Mailman Malone at the basketball, Jay Leno to come wrestle a match. And of course David Arquette. You know, and then that Judy Bagwell, Buff Bagwell's mother, on a forklift match, terrible, terrible. So it just went downhill, and then here's a thing that's interesting. Bischoff encouraged Brad Siegel. Maybe we could, if I get investors, I like to buy the program because it looked like Time Warner and an AOL didn't want that product. So he had a bunch of investors. What he was going to do if the deal went through is he was going to shut down for 6 weeks and come back with a pay per view called The Big Bang, um, you know, and reinvent WCW. Now, there was negotiation, and the Bischoff's investors called him. Well, he was fishing or whatever, and said, "It's done." And he thought it meant that they had the deal. And the guy said, "No, you don't understand. It's done. There's no deal because at the last minute, Time Warner and AOL pulled the TV rights for WCW. And without the TV time, that company was worth 2 cents. So, and there was kind of politicking where Eric Bischoff believes that Jim Barnett, who used to be the president of WCW, used to be and WCW was working for Vince McMahon, and he believes that Jim Barnett spoke to Brad Siegel, that they were friends, and convinced Brad Siegel to get Time Warner AOL to pull the TV rights so that McMahon could buy WCW because he felt with the he can buy the wrestlers and buy the all the pay per view rights, all the video library and everything. It'd be worth it. And Bischoff believes that's what tanked the deal. I don't know if Bischoff would have been able to restart WCW, but uh, he tried. And then, of course, in 2001, just before WrestleMania, Vince McMahon bought WCW. He came on TV and said he owns WCW, and he announced that he wanted to sign the contract at WrestleMania. Now, for you wrestling fans out there who wonder why WCW didn't, WWF, now WWE, didn't keep it a separate identity, separate to keep WCW separate, well, the answer, folks, is they tried. You could see what was going to happen because when Shane went on Nitro and said, "I own WCW," they were going to make um, they were going to make um, yeah they were going to make uh, they were going to have it separate because if Shane McMahon owns WCW, so he would make kayfabe the matches, and there could be rivalries and everything. They were going to keep it separate, but according to Jim Ross in the books that I read, either Slobberknocker or Under the Black Hat, he claims that yes, they tried to shop it around. He tried to shop it around, but nobody wanted, uh, nobody wanted to buy that product. WCW did change their name, but WWF is now WWE. But yeah, so what happened? They couldn't shop it around, so they had that crazy, stupid invasion angle where the WCW wrestlers with Shane McMahon invaded WrestleMania. They had an alliance with the ECW. It wasn't that great, and they couldn't shop it around, but they do have the library and everything. I heard rumors that they may bring back WCW, that there was a trademark for it, but that remains to be seen. But at that last Nitro, Sting wrestled Ric Flair, and of course they hugged at the end, and Booker T won the WCW Championship back, and he came on into WWE as the World Wrestling, the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. So, but that was stupid, and that was the demise. I mean, for me, it might have been interesting if they didn't pull the TV rights for Eric Bischoff to do WCW. But another question is that Vince McMahon, if he might have, if he wanted to do a WCW a and a WWE, what he should have done was, okay. He has two channels, right? He had at that time, he had Raw, which was on USA, and then he had SmackDown, which was on either UPN at the time. It was on uh, another channel. So what he could have done, but I think he didn't want to mimic WCW. What he could have done was he has Raw for WWF, temporarily have WCW have their show on Thursday, and then see if he can negotiate, and say, look, this is my product. but it's going to be under the WCW brand, but nobody wanted to buy it, and he couldn't do anything. So it just, it is sad because they did have good talent, the WCW. They just didn't know how to manage it. They didn't push guys like Eddie Guerrero, late Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Jericho, Perry Saturn. They didn't push the younger guys that deserved it because the older guys, were still in the spotlight and they had contracts. A lot of them had creative control in their contracts, which was stupid at the beginning, but that's enticed them to come. You know, it was, it was interesting when the NWO came on the scene, but then it kept being saturated because you had the black and white regular NWO, the Wolf Pack, the LWO. It was, when you have too much of something in your face, it gets stale. They didn't know how to push the younger guys and how to, like Vince McMahon did. Vince McMahon always pushed the younger generation when he saw things were getting stale. So, maybe they'll bring back WCW because it did have a rich history. You know, the Great American Bash in '83, in that cage, Harley Race and the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and they had Ric Flair, they had Harley Race, they had Vader, they had so much good talent, and they couldn't keep it on their feet. And the other thing is, I blame the powers that be, Time Warner, AOL, because they forced WCW to go to make it more catered to children, which was stupid. They didn't allow them to do the hardcore match like WWE did with the blood and everything. They didn't want that. They didn't understand the product. How they understood the product and gave WCW carte blanche, it might still be in existence today. They would compete. They would have, like AEW is doing. And Impact is starting to climb. But and then from the ashes of WCW, there came TNA Impact, but it didn't make as big a splash as WCW had did in those 83 weeks. So, I mean, AEW started to, but now they're also starting to get stale. But, you know, the WWE is known for pushing the younger guys and going with the generations. They're able to see what the fans are like and they can get an idea of what's going to work and what's not going to work. And so I hope WCW comes back to fruition, maybe uh, under the tutelage of Triple H. But WWE does have a lot of, they have WWE, they have Raw, they have NXT, they have SmackDown, main event, Saturday night's main event. It's so we'll see if they bring back WCW, they should do it on the down low and pretend they own it and pretend that they don't own it, and create something. But now in this era of internet, you can't have surprise. And we'll talk about WCW a little bit more, probably either in the next episode or the episode after that, because July means Bash at the Beach and looking at the biggest heel turn in professional wrestling history. And that's coming up in a future episode of the SmackDown Stu Report. So we're going to go because we have a lot. The the pro wrestling history, the this week in pro wrestling history, and I'm going to take a look. Actually, before we do that, because I know I had a question from the Becca Monster about WWE Night of Champions. I believe that I had heard it today that they are. It is going to happen. Um, it is going to happen. The Well, I'm going to take a look. It's not canceled, that's for sure. But there is 6 changes to the Night of Champions now, with the injuries plaguing the upcoming. I know this is classic wrestling, but this is important. Upcoming Night of Champions event. Already there have been some changes confirmed. The Dominic Mysterio AJ Styles match has been canceled. Um, and Dominic Mysterio actually had an injury, so that match is canceled. Um, the other change is Seth Rollins will be on commentary. One of the changes that could make Night Champions would be to add a little bit of Rollins on commentary, because since Rollins is not set to appear, maybe you could do some hilarious commentary. The other changes, Karrion Cross versus Sami Zayn has been added to the Night of Champions to replace the Dirty Dom AJ Styles match. Um, Rhea Ripley versus Raquel Rodriguez, that's been added as well. Um, Roman Reigns has been added to the King of the Ring final. While Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes legitimately earned their spots in the final round of the King of the Ring tournament, Roman Reigns could be added. So maybe they're going to do that. That's some rumors, but I do know that it will happen. They're on a flight. I'm going to take a look to see what's happening. If because I know it's not canceled. Um, okay, so yeah, so that's the update. Night of Champions will take place, and let me see. We'll let take a look at the card. Of course, yeah, the Mysterio match is canceled. So we have Randy Orton versus Cody Rhodes for the King of the Ring tournament. Maybe Roman Reigns will be added, and the winner, of course, of the King of the Ring receives a match for their respective brands' World Championship at SummerSlam. Um, Asuka versus Jade Cargill, the Queen of the Ring tournament final. And of course, same thing applies. The winner receives a match for their respective brands World Championship at SummerSlam. John Cena versus CM Punk for the undisputed WWE Championship. Jacob Fatu versus Solo Sikoa uh, for the United States Championship. Rhea Ripley versus Raquel Rodriguez in a street fight, and Sami Zayn versus Karrion Cross. So um, but there, it is going to happen. It will happen, even though wrestlers are on their way. So it will happen. It's not a floating hat. That's John Cena. That's John Cena. Curly. Yeah, that's John Cena in the back. Uh, the Mecha Monster got John Cena for me in addition to the in addition to the to the championship belt. It is a wrestling podcast now. Exactly. Exactly. I said before, you can't see me. John, we could see you. You're right there. um, yeah, so we're going to take a look at this week in pro wrestling history. In 1968, Bo Bro Brazil defeated Giant Baba for the NWA International Heavyweight Championship in Nagoya, Japan. He would lose the title back to Baba 2 days later. And yeah. Um, And yeah, so in 1972, the WWF Tag Team Championship changed hands to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, when Professor Tanaka and Mr. Fuji defeated Chief Jay Strongbow and Sonny King. Um, the in 1976 WWF Showdown at Shea Stadium took place in Flushing, New York. In the main event, Antonio Inoki and Muhammad Ali fought to a draw in a boxer versus wrestler match shown at the stadium, the crowd of 32,000 fans via closed circuit television from Tokyo. Bruno Sammartino retained the WWF title against Stan the Lariat Hansen by countout, and Andre the Giant defeated Chuck Wepner by countout in the second boxer versus wrestler match on the card. In 1978, Yukon Eric and Yukon Pierre defeated Dino Bravo and Dominic DeNucci for the WWF International Tag Team titles at a WWF house show in Madison Square Garden, New York. In 1980, the NWA World Tag Team Championships changed hands when Jimmy Superfly Snuka and Ray Stevens defeated Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Jay Youngblood in Greensboro, North Carolina. In 1986, Sherry Martel, that's yes, Sensational Sherry, defeated Candy Divine for the AWA World Women's Championship at AWA Battle at the Bay in Oakland, California. In the main event of that, Kurt Hennig, Shawn Michaels, and Marty Jannetty defeated Alex Smirnoff, Buddy Rogers, and Doug Summers in the six-man tag event. Yeah, so, and I'm glad viewers are watching. The June bug is in this chat. Miss Yonit, that's who celebrated a birthday. So again, I'll say happy belated birthday to the June bug. Great celebration on the weekend. So Just wanted to get that out of the way. Now, in 1990, the Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal, made their uh, WWF television debut in a squash match at the TV tapings of WWF Superstars of Wrestling in Daytona, Ohio. In 1992, the Barbarian and Dick Slater would become the last WCW United States Tag Team Champions when they defeated the Fabulous Freebirds at a WCW main event taping in Kansas City, Missouri. The titles would be retired at the end of July 1992. In 1992, the Nature Boy Buddy Rogers passed away peacefully at 71 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Rogers was one of the biggest wrestlers, superstars at the beginning of the television era in the early 1960s, and he influenced many professional wrestlers, including the other Nature Boy, Ric Flair, who used Rogers' nickname, look, and his finisher, the figure four leg lock. Of course, Rogers became the first ever recognized WWF champion in 1963 and won 13 world championships, including the NWA title. Rogers is one of a very few competitors to have held both the NWA and WWF world titles, and as a tribute to his legacy and influence, was inducted into the WWF Hall of Fame class of 1994 in Baltimore, Maryland. Um, Now, in 1994, WCW champion Ric Flair defeated the WCW International World Champion Sting in a unification match in the main event of Clash of the Champions in North Charleston, South Carolina. The unified title was represented by the famous Big Gold Belt there. That's in 1994. In 1995, the homicidal, suicidal, genocidal, death defying Sabu defeated Cactus Jack in the main event of ECW Hostile City Showdown in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Dory Funk and Terry Funk, Dory Funk Jr. and Terry Funk beat Public Enemy, or Johnny Grunge and Rocco Rock. Tommy Cairo beat the Sandman in a cane on a pole match, and the Tasmaniac Taz pinned Pitbull 1 in the dog collar match. In 1995, at a ceremony in Philadelphia, WWE inducted their second ever Hall of Fame class that included the Fabulous Moolah, the Grand Wizard, Ernie the Big Cat Lad, Pedro Morales, Ivan Putski, Antonio Argentina Rocca, and George the Animal Steel. Morales did not attend the ceremony as he was contracted to WCW as a Spanish league language announcer at the time. With the exception of the mid-pandemic 2021 ceremony, he remains the only living person not to attend their WWE Hall of Fame induction. In 1995, the third WWF King of the Ring pay per view took place at the historical Philadelphia Spectrum in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In that event, the event is regarded by many longtime wrestling fans as one of the worst pay per views of all time. Savio Vega was added to the tournament after picking up a win over IRS for a vacant spot in the tournament. On the Sunday Night Slam pre show, the vacant spot was left by Razor Ramon. Scott Hall was not was unable to compete due to legitimate rib injury picked up during a ladder match against Jeff Jarrett for the Intercontinental Championship earlier in the month. The tournament was won by Mabel from the Men on the Mission team, who recently turned heel. Mabel picked up a rare pinfall victory over The Undertaker during the pay per view and defeated Savio Vega in the finals. In the main event of the show, WWF champion Diesel and Bam Bam Bigelow defeated Psycho Sid and Tatanka from the Million Dollar Corporation. And also, Bret Hart defeated Jerry the King Lawler in a Kiss My Foot match, and Shawn Michaels and Kama wrestled to a time limit draw during the King of the Ring tournament match. In 1996, Sabu defeated Rob Van Dam in the main event of WCW Hardcore Heaven in Philadelphia. In 96, the fourth King of the Ring took place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Stone Cold Steve Austin defeated Mark Merrow in the semifinals, and then pinned and injured Jake Roberts in the finals to win the tournament. That's where Austin got his scar on his lip because he got hit in the face, I believe, with a kick from Mark Merrow. The and Austin's post-match promo and victory speech debuted the infamous Austin 316 tagline, which would go on to become the most popular catchphrase in professional wrestling history. Of course, also on the card, The Undertaker was defeated for the third time on WWE up to this point, when his match with Mankind was stopped due to a kayfabe, which was unconscious submission, kayfabe meaning not real. Um, yeah, and then yeah, Ahmed Johnson defeated Goldust to become the first ever African American Intercontinental Champion, and the Smoking Guns retained their WWF Tag Titles against the Godwins. The Ultimate Warrior defeated Jerry the King Lawler, and Shawn Michaels retained the WWF Championship against the British Bulldog in his return match from In Your House Beware of Dog the previous month, because at that In Your House there was a power failure, so they couldn't finish some of the matches, so they had to redo it again on a Tuesday pay per view at Beware of Dog 2. Now, in '96, the next night, the fallout from the King of the Ring and build up to the In Your House International Incident pay per view was covered on the live and taped edition of Monday Night Raw from the Green Bay, Wisconsin. On the live edition, The Undertaker picked up a disqualification win over Stone Cold Steve Austin after outside interference from Goldust. On the taped edition, WWE Champion Shawn Michaels defeated Marty Jannetty in a non-title match, and Goldust pinned Mark Merrow. The Ultimate Warrior would make his last competitive TV appearance on WWF TV in a match against Owen Hart and was kayfabe injured at the hands of Camp Cornette. In reality, the Warrior no-showed a number of house shows, and the situation was addressed on a taped edition of Raw by Gorilla Monsoon in the gimmick of the on-screen WWF president. Now, in 1998, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, his hometown, Ken Shamrock was crowned the tournament winner by defeating the Intercontinental Champion, The Rock, in the finals. Austin lost the WWE Championship to Kane in the main event of a First Blood match with the interference of The Undertaker and Mankind. But that pay per view uh, is famous for the match prior to the main event, Mankind and Undertaker in that Hell in a Cell match, which we looked at in previous podcasts. That was the match where Mankind climbed to the top of the cell and was thrown off by the Undertaker, and that started the catchphrase, "Oh my God, they've killed him! As God is my witness, they broke him in half." And the spot was planned, but as the spot was planned, what followed was not. After Mankind recuperated, both men went back up to the top of the cell. Undertaker delivered a chokeslam to Foley, but the mesh cage underneath him gave way, and Foley fell all the way into the ring below, with a chair hitting him in the face. But Undertaker defeated Mankind when he tombstoned him through the thumbtacks. In 1998, well, yeah, that's 1998 was Ken Shamrock. I'm sorry, I thought it was Kurt Angle. In 2000, Mick Foley was named commissioner of the new WWE. Was named the new WWF commissioner by Shawn Michaels on Raw in Worcester, Massachusetts, and he immediately set up that triple threat main event to determine the number one contender for the WWF Championship between Triple H, the new King of the Ring, Kurt Angle, and the new WWF Champion, The Rock. In the main event, The Rock was victorious, and neither Triple H or The Rock were named the number one contender for the title. In 2001, at the King of the Ring, Edge defeated Kurt Angle in the finals of the tournament, and the next night, his brother Christian turned on him, brought the trophy out, and hit Edge with a steel chair. In 2002, Vince McMahon opened Raw from Cleveland the night after King of the Ring and addressed the entire WWE Raw roster surrounding the ring and made one of the most important speeches in his company's history. McMahon asked the Red Brand roster who had ruthless aggression, and that was the ruthless aggression era. And what I didn't know was that segment was in response to the recently launched Total Nonstop Action (TNA) wrestling brand, which made its TV debut 5 days prior to the edition of Raw, and that was the first opportunity for McMahon to address the situation on air without mentioning TNA by name. McMahon revealed that it was his ruthless aggression in the past which helped him wipe out competition from the old territory organizations such as the NWA, AWA, the WCW, and ECW. That one segment highlighted the WWE's acknowledgement of the end of the Attitude Era and the shift in WWE programming to at the time. In 2002, at the Smackdown taping in Chicago, Illinois, John Cena made his official TV debut by answering Kurt Angle's open challenge and saying that when Kurt Angle asked him, um, what are you doing here? Why would you wrestle? Why would you accept the challenge? John Cena replied, ruthless aggression. And then Cena was endorsed backstage with a handshake from the WWE Undisputed Champion, The Undertaker. In 2000, also in 2002, former WWE Champion Bret Hart suffered a stroke as a result of a blood clot caused by falling debris from his bicycle near his Calgary home. In 2007, a great tragedy. Nancy Sullivan, known as Woman, aka Woman, and their son was murdered by her husband Chris Benoit, who committed suicide at their home in Fayetteville, Georgia. And over a 3 day period, Benoit killed Nancy and their son Daniel before committing suicide by hanging himself from a piece of equipment, a gym equipment in his home gym. Post-mortem tests conclude that Benoit's brain damage was the equivalent to an 85-year-old person with Alzheimer's disease, which was considered a strong contributor to the violent and deadly um, attacks. Now, yeah, and his brain was given to a university where Christopher Nowinski was there. It was he became he became a researcher and he researched CBT, which is that brain disease when you have too many hits to the head. Now, in 2008, the first night of the sixth WWF draft took place on Raw from San Antonio, Texas. This draft was announced to help the decline in the ratings from Raw in the United States since that WrestleMania of that year, and also for its initial purpose to freshen up the roster and storylines. WWE Champion Triple H defeated Mark Henry to win the first draft pick of Rey Mysterio being drafted from SmackDown to Raw. In the main event, Edge won a 15-man all-brand battle royal with two draft picks, which were Mr. Kennedy from SmackDown to Raw and WWE Champion Triple H from Raw to SmackDown. Other notable draft picks included CM Punk, who was the Money in the Bank contract holder from ECW to Raw. Jim Ross was drafted from Raw to SmackDown, and Michael Cole was drafted from the Blue Brand to Raw. Unlike the previous drafts, and with the outcome scripted and played in kayfabe, many of the talent were not told of their scripted changes before this draft. In 2013, Matt Bourne, the second generation wrestler and son of Tony Bourne, passed away at 55 in Plano, Texas. Bourne was most well known as a wrestler to originally portray the character of Doink the Clown in WWF in the early 1990s. He also wrestled under his own name on the very first WrestleMania. Aside from WWF, Bourne competed in several organizations such as NWA and WCW as Big Josh. Um, and in 2015, Nature Boy Buddy Landell, another Nature Boy, passed away peacefully in his sleep at age 53 in Chilhowie, Virginia, from complications after a car accident. Landell performed for a number of organizations, including Smoky Mountain Wrestling, USWA, All Japan Pro Wrestling, National Wrestling Alliance, WCW, and the World Wrestling Federation. In 1990, Landell was honored as the most influential WWF and WCW wrestler from Kentucky by the state's governor and made a Kentucky colonel. In 2011, Landell was inducted into the Legends of Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. That's the This Week in Professional Wrestling History. On the next podcast, or sorry, the next SmackDown Stu report, we're gonna look at the Chris Benoit tragedy in detail as it came up as well. We're gonna look at the events that happened, um, and it all started with the death of Eddie Guerrero with his friend, and we'll take a look at that, the Chris Benoit story, and much, much more, of course, and also another edition of the This Week in Professional Wrestling History. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. Again, please subscribe to the channel and like the podcast, and we will see you again real soon. I will let you know. Please stay tuned to our Facebook page for when I will go live next week. You can send an email, like I said again, at smackdownstewchannel at yahoo.com, smackdownstew at channel at yahoo, sorry, smackdownstewchannel at gmail.com, smackdownstewchannel at gmail.com, SmackDown Stew YouTube channel on Facebook. So we will see you next time. And this is SmackDown Stew saying ciao for now.